Those of you here today are responsible for advising and leading and guiding. Spending on cybersecurity is expected to top $100 billion in 2015, with a forecast annual growth rate of over 20% over the next 5 years. And this, together with the threat of cyber attacks to corporate performance, I believe warrants our companies and our industry's attention. This next session will be hosted by Carlos Moreira, our moderator. We were very fortunate to have Carlos with us from Switzerland and London, where he delivered an enlightening address that was both terrifying and I think encouraging, in so much as that there are solutions that organizations like Carlos's are developing and bringing to the market today, and I know that will be very much a part of this conversation. So I'd like you to please join me in welcoming Carlos Moreira, the CEO of WiseKey. And an esteemed panel, which Carlos, I will let you introduce.
Thank you very much, David. It is a pleasure for me to be here. We just did a similar panel in London, in Bloomberg, about cybersecurity. I am from a country which, as you can imagine, has huge concern about cybersecurity because it's a country which is a financial hub. And just to give you an image, which is the image I would like to open the panel, in Switzerland we are already voting, means election, through a mobile phone. So that means that there is a threat, there is a huge amount of opportunities as well if we know how to mitigate those threats. So I have the pleasure to have a very interesting panel and at the same time very different panel because we have among ourselves experts on cybersecurity, or financial experts as well, and they have relations to the cybersecurity. So I have a pleasure just on order to introduce Jeffrey Wells, Executive Director of the Cybersecurity Development in Maryland Department of Business and Economic Development. Jeffrey will give us insights from Maryland and how to build cybersecurity hubs, which are the opportunities around states to involve and invest in cybersecurity. Then we have Mario Rovello. Mario Rovello is an old friend of me. We have been working together with Microsoft in the past, where Mario was leading the public sector division and very much involved in everything which relates cybersecurity around the world, and in particular now in advising the U.S. government on cybersecurity. Then I would like to introduce Gregory Sohaja, which is the president of the McKinney Partners Business Intelligence Division and manage the company service capability for corporate due diligence, investigation, and cybersecurity and business intelligence. He will also give us insight about this huge market growing around us, which is the investigation and intelligence market. And then lastly with Gregory Bedrosian, also a good old friend. Gregory is very active into the investment world in Europe and also in the United States, and he will give us some insights about the cybersecurity M&As and where we stand in terms of the opportunities around cybersecurity. So maybe just to start, and I'm going to do that in a Q&A as we do in Davos in the World Economic Forum. By the way, this panel will continue in Davos in January as we are continue reflecting our visions and thought leadership on cybersecurity. Maybe just to start first with Mario. Mario, as we're in the United States, what is the position of the Congress in what concerns cybersecurity? Are we taking serious cybersecurity now versus what happened maybe in the past?
Thank you, Carlos. The issue is real, as we've just heard the statistics, and it's being discussed in real manner, real time. However, the political parties in Washington, both in the Congress and the administration, are having this difficult time agreeing on a baseline and on a cybersecurity framework. A number of congressional leaders are looking to make it voluntary. Others want to make it mandatory. The administration has come out and has proposed an excellent cybersecurity framework. It's voluntary in nature, but again, it's getting consensus. There's a lot of talk about cybersecurity. And actually, Jeff and I participated at National Governor's Task Force with governors from Maryland and Michigan. And actually, the governors were able to get something done because both parties were at the table and they put politics aside on this issue at the state level and actually worked on it. And were able to form a coalition. Whereas in Congress, it's much more difficult to find that coalition, even within a party. So there's very wide views. So we're hopeful that we will see some action very soon. There is a need for legislative action. I will applaud the administration for taking positive steps, but at the same time, we in the industry do need clarity in the legislation. For example, the number one issue that would help us collectively is the sharing of information on vulnerabilities and risks. Companies are afraid to come forward and share that information because it will be held against them. But yet, the breaches continue. So from that perspective alone, establishing a safe harbor provision, as well as allowing and encouraging information to be shared amongst the parties, having corporate sectors and corporate leaders in IT come forward and say, these are the threats that we're seeing coming in, would help agencies and law enforcement address the issue. But there's just a hostility at times of working together right now in Washington on a number of these issues.
From our observation in my company, and we are helping several governments on cybersecurity, one of the threats that we are realizing now is that the password is dead. I mean, we're still using password. Password was a notion even before the internet. We have been using password for nearly 30 years now. And the password technology is totally obsolete. And everything runs in passwords. I mean, you are all using passwords to access your mobile phones, to access your email, to access your website, and passwords are totally unprotected. So in the United States, you're going to have something that in Europeans we studied, maybe because we studied with the chip technology many years ago. You're going to have something we call the National Infrastructure on Trusted Identity Cyberspace, which is a strategy for the White House to protect citizens in the United States. What is your views? Because I really believe cybersecurity ground zero is protecting first the citizens. Corporations have different ways to protect themselves, but citizens is essential because citizens are being hacked every day. 18 million Americans lost their personal data last year, and this is incremental. So how are we protecting citizens from the U.S. government perspective?
Today, we're really not. I mean, we are, all of us in this room, we're the low-hanging fruit for the hackers. You know, we're all tapping our smartphone, our device. We're clicking on links. We're clicking on emails that we think we know who they're from, but in reality, it's from a hacker or others. So the issue is, today we're not focused on the consumer and the end user as much as we are trying to protect the data and the networks. And I think that there's an opportunity for the U.S. to learn from the European side. And in fact, coming up at the end of the month, there is a joint session of NIST and Department of Homeland Security taking a delegation to Europe in Brussels and learning about the NIS and how to apply those lessons and those technologies that have been developed elsewhere in Europe and bringing them back to the U.S. There's hope, but it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, but yet the hackers are hacking us daily. I mean, they're 3-4 steps ahead of us, but the opportunity is for us to educate the consumers and really apply a new standard, a new framework of how do we protect individual privacy as well as individual identities.
And Jeffrey, Maryland has been, anyways, that's the perception we get from outside, maybe from films, is the hub of cybersecurity of the United States, together maybe with Salt Lake, which also is very big now on cybersecurity and in particular cloud technology. Is cybersecurity a major economic growth for a state? Is it states can create jobs, can create startups around cybersecurity, and if they do, what is the strategy in Maryland?
Sure. The state of Maryland is considered the epicenter for cybersecurity, mostly because of the strong presence with NSA, Cyber Command, NIST, and the other agencies that are there. I think it's important to think cybersecurity is a really cool word. But what does it mean? And I think that there's a lot of talk about it, but I think it's really about ones and zeros. It's about the user. And I think that focusing on the technology is a quick way to make money, but it's not about solving the problem. And so I think that one of the things that we have going on in Maryland is that this tight geography of both customers as well as education institutions as well as a startup community, and this evolution from the past where it was very heavily focused on services and addressing the customer, U.S. government as a customer, to really approaching various sectors and saying, what are the problems that sectors have? What can we use from what we know in the past and apply those to developing new companies with products, whether those be software or hardware products, to address very specific customer needs. And I think that's the most opportunity. It's a wonderful business model. I wish I had come up with it as a hacker. I love it, but is that it's never going to go away. This problem is never going to go away. Every single person in this room, every network, every piece of data that you have is already corrupted. That's important to know. And I think that from a business model perspective, either whether you're trying to think about investments or just solving your own internal issue, is to realize we've already been invaded, and how you can handle that problem.
Especially if you project that over the next 10 years. I mean, by the year 2020, we're going to have 50 billion devices connected to the internet. I was with the World Economic Forum in a meeting with Chancellor Merkel in Germany, where the vision was that, for instance, car companies are not anymore a car company, they're a software company making cars. So now the shift is towards those companies to become platforms, knowledge platforms, and being able to secure their products, because, I mean, hacking a phone is fine, but imagine hacking your car in the future, or hacking your house, or hacking your power grid, or hacking your nuclear stations. I mean, the Internet of Things is there already, and the same things apply to cybersecurity, and personal data applies also to the Internet of Things. So it's a huge possibility for the United States to be a leader on that.
Sure, it is an incredible opportunity for business growth. I mean, this Internet, and I call it the data of things, is a great opportunity to increase efficiency, to really grow your business, and to address real problems. But on the flip side, there are an insurmountable amount of issues that are out there, and you can't address every single risk in cybersecurity on a daily basis. It's just the volume is too much. But it really is about hedging and identifying what are the risks and what are the ways that you're going to spread that across your portfolio to say we're going to address this from a risk perspective rather than from a defensive perspective.
So Greg, first Greg, as we have two Gregs. Just on your experience, one of the things we are realizing also, and in the advice work my company does, but also at Davos, is that when we approach companies on cybersecurity about a few years ago, if we talk at CEO or board, at board level on cybersecurity, they say, look, this is not my problem, talk to the IT guy, and he will talk to you. Obviously, the IT guy was only looking at the technology. Now, with the new threats on Target losing their valuation, Home Depot a few weeks ago, JP Morgan, and this is going to be recurrent in the month ahead, CEOs are getting concerned that the cybersecurity is not a concern of the chief security officer, but is his concern, as it's basically the entire company valuation can be wiped out by just having a bad communication issue on cybersecurity. Now, how you help companies for your investigative work? What is the process? If I am a CEO of a company and I really want to know if I am protected, and I call on you, what I should ask you and what you should be helping me with?
Yeah, that's a broad question, but a very good one certainly. And this is the old corporate espionage. Now, cyber threats, it's taken on a new name. You can do it from 1,000 miles away and get proprietary information or employee information and so many different things, a way you can infiltrate a company. Is it still involve an insider? Yeah, the probability of that happening is still high, that there's somebody inside who's helping or making the process easier. But the CEO's got to know that it's a team effort. It's not just IT. It's not just the hierarchy of the company. There's so many different ways to do it. There is still a simple physical aspect to it. And it's all about lowering the probability of falling victim. But your reputation is on the line. Certainly the proprietary information you're protecting is a big concern. And now these executives are traveling so much and taking their laptops and their zip drives and everything else with them. It's got to be looked at as part of the whole picture. You can't just narrow it down to an executive or the C-level or IT. So you go in there and try to get your arm around everything and narrow it down the best you can.
But don't you realize also, maybe it's my observation outside the United States, that the corporation thinks cybersecurity as a fortress, meaning the bad people are outside, inside we're all good people, and therefore if we buy a lot of technology to protect the perimeter, we are safe. But 99% of the latest cybersecurity threats happen inside. Right. Happens because we bring a mobile phone, which is unprotected. Happens because we are not able to segregate personal data with the corporate data. How do you protect, or how do you advise companies to protect against those threats?
I mean, the foundation for that is a very solid set of policies and procedures to start. But it carries on from there. It works in a layered system. Having a policy for a terminated employee, a disgruntled employee, all these simple things now hold a lot of weight and can cause a lot of damage. So it might not just be a cyber threat after information, it might be sabotage or other issues that can cause a great amount of damage. So,
But I think you touched on something really important. That this is not a technology problem. Technology is the tool, but everything in cybersecurity is a people problem. Whether it's bad design, whether there's a bad actor somewhere trying to do something, or internally, it all comes down to the people. And so it's not just the CISO's problem. It's not the CSO or the CTO. This is an entire company's issue, or an entire ecosystem's issue, is that it comes down to the people. And how are you going to address not just the disgruntled, but how are you going to train them to be aware that bringing in your device into the enterprise is going to cause problems. And if you make it difficult, we all know, people are going to figure out a way to get around it. So it's, your passwords are complex, people will take them to their keyboard. So it's...
But the technology is there. When you work in good technology, good has this technology to allow you bring your mobile phone inside, which is totally protected. So why are not we using it? Why are not investing? Why corporations don't buy this technology faster?
At times, it's just they have so many priorities. And in the past, this hasn't been a big problem. But ask Target, ask Home Depot, ask any company that's been hacked. It's a major problem now that's now reached the board level. The CEO and the board members are liable. And many of them have started to lose their jobs over this issue. But in the past, there were so many priorities that they said, oh, the IT guy will take care of this. We'll put a firewall and we're safe. We're not. I mean, we ourselves are the largest amount of, we have the low-hanging fruit. I mean, hackers look for all of us, and that's their way in. Whether it's a personal device or a corporate device, it's how you manage your data, how you protect the data. The devices at times is irrelevant. It's the data in the network.
And the network is irrelevant.
If I could, Carlos, just to interject as it relates to what our firm, Redwood, is predominantly involved in, which is merger and acquisition and corporate finance and private equity world, to echo some of the comments made here, we're seeing more and more boards elevate that security role to either the CEO, sometimes an independent chairman who may have some expertise, and importantly, in M&A processes of a company within any sector, especially large cap acquirers are adding that type of cybersecurity diligence to their closing checklist, in addition to financials, in addition to calling vendors and customers. They're adding an element of that because what they don't want to do is be in a situation where it's been ignored or underinvested in for years. Then they acquire the business and inherit a lot of those issues. So it's come to the fore as it relates to the value of businesses. And unfortunately, some of the high-profile cases that are all across the news, it's unfortunate for those businesses and those CEOs and boards, but the silver lining is it's created awareness at a much higher level, even with mid-sized players, to focus on that more as it relates to value building.
But Gregory, are we investing enough on cybersecurity? I mean, when we are talking about the massive revenue generation possibility of cybersecurity market, the fact that we are reaching 180 billion by the year 2018, why are we not investing? I mean, if you really look the number of companies on cybersecurity, you still have RSA, Symantec, those are 20 years, 15 years old company, with the exception of FireEye that just entered the market about a year ago. There's nothing else. Why are we not investing more in cybersecurity?
It's a great question. I think if one looks at the statistics over the last couple of years of investment in those businesses, most of them are actually very early stage startups. We actually looked at some of the data, and over the last kind of 12 to 18 months, over 60% of the capital deployed into cybersecurity related companies were in either seed or A round investing. So what that's telling us is, and this is of a several billion-dollar private equity and venture capital companies. So what that's saying is there are a whole generation of younger startups that are addressing, some of these new emerging needs, but they're at a very early stage. And the positive side is well that the types of investors that are focused on this are some of the world's leading venture and private equity groups. If you look at, again, in the last 12 to 18 months, the top investors in cybersecurity early stage companies are literally, Intel, Kleiner Perkins, Sequoia, Accel, Andreessen Horowitz. So the smart and the high IQ investors, the cream of the crop of Silicon Valley and that related ilk are investing, but they're targeting young, smaller players, and what that could mean, Carlos, is over time a consolidation play where some of the larger or more mid-sized public or private groups get critical mass and are able to bring in some of those capabilities from some of those hot prospects of some of those high-quality venture-backed companies.
I think the consolidation is a critical point of cybersecurity because my experience is that, for instance, if you're trying, when I am a private company and trying to sell to top 500 firms my technology, the first question they ask me, when are you going to be public? Because I don't trust you being a private company on cybersecurity because they're giving to you critical assets to protect. So the problem is that you're only going to be a public company after a certain time. So what happens between that moment and the time I become a public company? So I guess consolidation is a solution, but another solution is also to educate VCs that cybersecurity is not like social media, that you can create a fuss about it and just collect money. I mean, cybersecurity is a long-term process that requires first a company to go through the process on building trust, because it's all what it's all about, right? Trust. So yeah,
and that's expensive. It's both in time and resources. But I would say is, in Maryland and their general region around that area, we've seen in the last 24 months a large number of ex-government employees. So NSA, PhDs, ex-military have gone to create these new companies, many of which are getting invested by those organizations. The